Awesome. Well, we want to welcome everyone to today's masterclass. Title of today's masterclass is Crowdfunding Secrets: How to Raise 3.4 million in Record Time. We are lucky enough to have Jim Iversen with Sen-Jam on our call today. Him and Tian Wong are going to be doing a little bit of a fireside chat. Um, so they'll be talking with one another, and the schedule today is going to be about 20 to 30 minutes of that presentation and fireside chat. And after that, we'll have 20 to 30 minutes of Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. You can just put them in there, or you can private message me. Or if you prefer to unmute and ask during the Q&A, you can wait and do that as well. So this meeting will be recorded. If you have any need to share it with anyone afterwards, or if you want to watch it back, we will make sure you have that recording. But without further ado, I want to turn the time over to Jim and Tian.
Thank you so much, Sky, and thanks everybody for joining us today. We're really excited about today's masterclass. We're going to do a fireside chat format where I'll be asking our special guest some questions about his company and the fundraising history, as well as the success that they've had with crowdfunding, why they chose crowdfunding as a way to raise some money, and tactically what did they do to be able to raise basically almost $6 million from over 1,000 investors. Most recently on WeFunder, Jim raised about 3.4 million. And I know that a lot of you have curiosity, we do as well, with respect to how to conduct a successful crowdfunding campaign. There's so many variables and so many tactical things and tricks and tips, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways today from Jim. Jim Iversen is a serial entrepreneur. He's a multiple-time cashed out investor and entrepreneur, and Sen-Jam Pharmaceutical is a company that's on the rise. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but maybe I'd like to introduce Jim. And Jim, if you could tell us a little bit about Sen-Jam, what your core mission is, and what was the original inspiration behind Sen-Jam, and what problems you're solving with your technology.
Great, thank you, Tian. Before I get that, let me just give by way of background. From an educational perspective, I have a degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in computer science, and started my first business in college, which launched me into a career in the supply chain space. Barcodes came out, and I started writing software to connect barcodes to scanners, to scales, to rate tables, and now every package that you get delivered to your house has got some component of that in it. And then I went from there to developing a manifesting system, and then I went into full-blown kind of a two-way path. We built distribution centers and did all the conveyor mechanization and computer controls. All the bells and whistles you see with Amazon, we took companies from the old days with clubs and bearskins, and we automated them to where they are today. And then also on the other side, I had a couple software companies. As software evolved, we did enterprise resource planning, warehouse management, warehouse controls, and I sold my last software company 8 years ago. And then that was when I stepped into the life science space. My wife, Jackie, who's co-founder of Sen-Jam Pharmaceutical, is a pharmacist. And I think we had closed on my last business, and it was 2 days later, and Jackie came to me with an idea. I have this idea of repurposing small molecules for large unmet needs. And in her background, with a master's degree from St. John's and also a fellowship from Memorial Sloan Kettering, she always wondered why we treated pain as opposed to prevented pain. And within the pain space, it was pain and inflammation. So she brought this idea, and my immediate response was to go to the whiteboard, and I drew the 2x2 matrix. And on the y-axis, I said, "Oh, this is simple. We'll just de-risk on the clinical and regulatory side. And on the x-axis, we'll file a lot of intellectual property. And when we get to the top right-hand quadrant, when we've got intellectual property granted and we're beyond phase 2 in clinical studies, which is where we've got efficacy, that'll be the point of licensing our technology." And both of those axes, starting at 0, There's a lot of effort on the y-axis. There's a theory, there's research, there's literature search, which has gotten so much easier. And one of the great things that I've brought to this, when I think that we're in the biotech business, I think we're in the tech bio business, because I really brought technology to bio. And so we've leveraged AI, we've leveraged principles from logistics right from the beginning. But you still have to do the work from literature search, in vitro, in vivo, preclinical, proof of concept, and then ultimately get into humans. That's the important part that we do on the de-risking side. And then on the intellectual property side, filing provisional patents, which then become non-provisional, and then move to the national phase, where you have to choose the countries that you want to file in, and then ultimately you look to be prosecuted and granted. And I'm happy to say right now where we are with this, we have 5 lead assets in that sweet spot. We have another 6 or 7 assets behind it. And 2 of our lead assets, we've identified 4 or 5 or 6. There's 6 pillars that we look at to look to bring us to market. We need evidence-based science, and then after evidence-based science, we look at publishing papers and filing intellectual property. And then something really unique that we've done is we've manufactured our product in parallel with our clinical development. That's part of our lean development methodology with our corporate venture partner, KVK Tech. And then after we get those 4 items, then we get a valuation on the asset, and then we look to find a commercial partner, strategic partner, for either licensing, co-development, or acquisition. And that's our business model. Our business model is bring to end of phase 2, get patents granted, and license that technology to somebody who wants to take on the commercial risk. And our 2 lead assets, we have a therapeutic that we just finished a phase 2 clinical trial with Duke University. As the principal investigators, we got part of the data back. We're getting the blood work completed now. We started a second phase 2 trial with ethics approval in Australia. We've got some pricing issues that we're rebidding the site work on that project. That's for overindulgence of food and drink. Our third asset, which we just got results back, we've done a lot of work in the neuroinflammation space around opioid use disorder, and the National Institute of Drug Abuse read some of our papers, and they pulled us into a program that they have, and they've been testing our drug against polysubstance use disorder, specifically methamphetamines, and they've just completed their second study. And the results of the first 2 studies were really good, and they're starting a third study. And we have a call with NIDA next week. We could be a first-in-class agent for methamphetamine use, which we're still working in animals. And then last but not least, we're working on it. We have an injectable and a over-the-counter cold therapeutic. So with that, I'll pause there and hand it back over to Tien.
Really, thank you for that, setting the stage for us here. I know today's topic is on fundraising, specifically crowdfunding. So before we talk about the crowdfunding sort of strategy and tactics, can you give us a 2-minute overview of your fundraising history, the fundraising journey you guys have experienced so far, before WeFunder and before crowdfunding? How are you guys thinking about raising capital? You have a lot of moving parts there. And I know our audience is not just healthcare and life sci, but it's a lot of other technology founders who are considering fundraising. So if you could answer more in a generic capacity, that would be helpful to them too. Thanks.
Yeah. So prior to when we started the company, we consciously made the decision to self-fund the company through 2020 so that we could really lock down our business strategy, and then also build up some mass, so to speak, within our flywheel. And then we did kick off crowdfunding in 2020. We started our crowdfunding journey after doing a lot of research in latter part of 2017, 2018, and 19. It was a wild west. The Jobs Act got approved in 2012. I think crowdfunding really started in 2016, 2017, but I think we hit it right at the time when supply and demand were meeting one another nicely. We learned very, very quickly what platforms can do and what platforms can't do, and level set our expectations of what to expect. And we worked with a couple of the different crowdfunding companies, trying them out, and iterating from the learnings of each of those. And then we landed on, after we landed with our first 7-figure round was with WeFunder, and then we tested one of the other campaigns after that, and with less success, and then we went back to WeFunder, which, as Tien said, we ended this round with $3.4 million, combination of Reg D and Reg CF. And that's been our history on the crowdfunding side, always looking at doing a Reg D and Reg CF in parallel. I could speak a lot about why and what we've done there, and and then also being able to leverage our valuation as a currency to bring in a corporate venture partner, and then also using it as currency for whether it's options for advisors or things like that. So it's been a real interesting ride.
Yeah. So a couple questions on the fundraising, just to kick things off on that topic. So if you could address, why you chose fundraising over these other options. Like, was it more of an experiment, a science project, or did you go into it with full intention? Did you go into it as more of a brand play or a capital raise, or both? And then you mentioned you had different crowdfunding platforms you've tried. What made WeFunder stand out for you guys?
Yeah, so the first question of choosing crowdfunding over traditional equity or venture capital. So in my other businesses, I had mostly private equity investment in my businesses, because of we were profitable, revenue generating and profitable, and so that was a space I came from. And early on, I was testing the waters with VCs. And I realized quickly that there are a lot of tire kickers out there. That when my skin thickened up enough to ask, tell me about how much dry powder you have, tell me about how many investments you made over the last 3 years, and what your average check size was. I got a lot of hums, and that from an entrepreneur's perspective, that really bothered me, because I take this very, very seriously, what I do, and and I found that was more the rule, not the exception, and then that made me shift pretty quickly in the diligence putting into some of these early stage companies, and then moving the goalposts around. I said, I can't get lost in this. I got to focus on what I can do, and that was really the driver of the maturity of crowdfunding, and being able to see how we could generate and deploy capital in a way to hit milestones and create value for our shareholders. Looking at comparing WeFunder to some of the other campaigns, early on, when we first started raising capital, there was a lot of discussion around where the investors come from. Early on, in 2020 when we started, it was 60 to 80% of the investors are going to come from the crowdfunding network, and 20 to 40% are going to come from your network. And I quickly realized that was not true. After we completed our first campaign, 100% of the investors came from my network. Then we did our second campaign with WeFunder, which was a 7-figure campaign, which I think we raised about 1.1 million. Then I was able to settle in more on the numbers. I had more data to compare to. And then after that, the thing I realized was the analytics. I'm a data guy, and the analytics on the platforms, the analytics weren't good. Somebody can come into my site and go invest somewhere else, and it was being registered as, from an analytic perspective, that the investment was being made in Sen-Jam. And so I looked at some sites that were personally hosted, that we would have all the analytics. And then I realized that there was some overselling and under delivering there. And that was a little disappointing. And I experienced the same thing with how many investors really come from the crowdfunding space versus from Sen-Jam's world. And now in hindsight, I could look back, and it's probably 20 to 40% of the first-time investors are coming from the crowdfunding space, and 60 to 80% are coming from your network. But there's a momentum build around that too. I mean, there's a huge momentum build, and I one of the things I really pride myself on with our 1,100 investors that we have, 26% of them have first-time investors invested a second time, and 45% of our second-time investors invested a third time. So, and then we have had people who've invested in every round up to like 13. We have investors invested 13 times in the company.
Wow. So you've done, is it 2 campaigns specifically that you've done on crowdfunding or more?
We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You've done 5 campaigns. The most recent one was with WeFunder, which closed out a couple of weeks ago, and that was at 3.4 million, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So each time you obviously have gotten better and better, and we want to hear your sort of learning. So if we did a little bit of a tactical deep dive, can you talk a little bit about sort of the campaign preparation that you did in terms of, what assets you brought to the table, whether it's a deck, a video, which I thought was outstanding, PR and other things. And then how did you build sort of your early social proof for the first initial investors and to build that momentum, which I understand is critical to successful crowdfunding campaigns? And then if you could talk a little bit about your messaging as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I use the flywheel concept, and like all of your assets that you could put into the mass of that flywheel, because you're going to get that flywheel spinning. And the idea when you get that flywheel spinning is that you want that inertia, you want that to keep going. And so early on, one of the things that we really loved about WeFunder is setting up a campaign is as easy as setting up your LinkedIn profile. And we had a campaign up within 24 hours, and then you're able to do what's called testing of the waters, because you might not be sure of whether you want to go live or not. And testing of the waters lets you get a link to your campaign, and you might want to set a hurdle around that of 50K or 75K, and then you build. Big part of the mass of the flywheel is making this list of all the organizations you're involved in, the areas of interest that you have, what you're looking to do. This is after the fact that when starting a business, there's some fundamental things that you need to have. You've got to be approaching a large unmet need. You've got to have some proprietary technology that's addressing that large unmet need, a team to execute, and then understanding how you're going to use your capital to hit milestones to increase the valuation. And then fifth and most important is how you're going to make your investors a lot of money. So you having that as a basis and building your campaign around that, getting on to WeFunder, very, very easy. Videos go a long way. Short videos go a long way. One of the things I really love about WeFunder is the ability to put out messaging, to put out updates. And the minute you put out an update, it goes to all of your investors and to all of your followers. So, when you start with a WeFunder, they announce that there's a new person on the campaign, and people start looking at what you're doing, and then there's some trigger points along the way. But when you put out an update, you're able to get the URL, and that's something that's a differentiator for WeFunder, because you can use that for social media. And then from a messaging perspective, we're all about velocity and transparency. So the transparency is truth, trust, and transparency, and And velocity is just making sure we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you and tell you and tell you what you told you. I mean, we're going to hit milestone. We're going to tell you the milestones we're going for this quarter, this month, this quarter, this year, and then achieving those milestones. And that's how you build trust. And upon building trust, that's when people want to join your campaign. And a big part of Sen-Jam, we're looking at democratizing not only fintech but also the life science space. And we are, we built a community. We're looking at building a community who are interested in the work that we're doing, and we're creating a pull strategy versus where traditional pharma has a push strategy. Where traditional pharma manufactures what they want to manufacture, and they spend billions of dollars on it, create these huge moats, and we believe that we can disrupt that. We believe that from the groundswell community up, we can have a large impact on that. One of the things that we do a lot of that people love is educating, on the education and inspiration on the work that we're doing through webinars. And we probably host a webinar every 4 to 6 weeks. We do messaging to keeping everybody up to speed with what we're where we're at and the milestones that we're hitting, and it's reflective in the audience that has joined us on this journey.
Yeah. So in terms of, you mentioned webinars. So if you looked at your best performing channels to achieve investment capital, and looking at channels like social media, right? You have different platforms, public relations, webinars, email. How would you rank those different channels in terms of, sort of effectiveness for getting investors?
Well, for the kind of work that we're doing, the biggest response that is has been with webinars, but on the social media side, we've done a lot of A/B testing, and so we'll do a lot of A/B testing to bring in names, and we'd filter them through, and then ultimately we would put them in our investor relations database. And then once they were in it, it's like working a pipeline where we have our 1,100 investors, but we have another 1,000 prospective investors, group one, who have an open rate of 75% of everything that we send. And then we have prospective investor group two, which has 1,000 people in it, which has an open rate between 50 and 74%. And then we have about 3,000 people that we're always adding to it, and if they're not opening, we're reducing that. So we're working that pipeline, and the more of the social media stuff is to get them into our bigger pipeline. We feel as though it takes 5 to 7 touches before we get an investment, and another thing that I do, which it's great when people take advantage of it, but I make myself available for one-on-one calls. And when people reach out, and if their phone numbers is on an email they send, I'll pick up the phone and call them. Oftentimes, email's slow. You can answer something with 10 minutes of conversation versus 45 minutes of email. And a couple of these, one, for instance, email that I call back, the first investment he made was $100,000, and then he's matched that with another 100,000 investment. And we've seen the same thing with webinars, where somebody's invested 10 or 20,000 in a webinar, before coming into a webinar, but then, they're liking what they hear, and they've invested more. But it's working the system, and
Yeah.
And then, within, if you're, I could talk about the running of a campaign, or if you have another specific question that you want to.
Yeah, I wonder about running the campaign, how much time you and your team spent. And by the way, audience, we're going to open it up for Q&A in about 5 minutes. So you can either put your questions into the chat, or Skylar will be calling on you. I know that we have some questions already, but yeah, I'd love to learn about, how much time you and your team spent. When we ran the campaign for you guys for our marketing, I was shocked when I saw that you put your contact info in there. kind of had my doubts, like, geez, Jim's going to get flooded, or that's pretty ballsy to do that. But it does show commitment of the CEO. It shows really good attention, the personal touch. And it's like when I give my cell phone out to people, people are like, why are you doing that? You're going to get called. Well, they'll call you only if it's important, But I thought that was really genius in a way. I haven't seen that with other campaigns. Most of the campaigns are more clinical and more less, personal touch. And maybe that's a reason why you guys were so successful. I don't know. I mean, did you always do that for all your campaigns?
Yeah, and it's the phone, people don't ring off. There's only probably I may have had 6 to 12 phone calls in 4 years, and and I enjoy them. Like an unanswered question that to me, like people shouldn't be scratching their head. And when you guys promoted our campaign, I thought it was fantastic, and I could say that you guys were an exception because there was a return on capital to the efforts, and that's one. If you were to ask me, my biggest concern is that when you doing crowdfunding, you're going to get bombarded by 1,000 people who are going to guarantee return on spend, advertising, all of this stuff, and people can go down rabbit holes and spend a lot of money there.
One of our investors, was it 10K or 20K off of an email call, right?
Yeah, it was 10K.
Did that person call you, or did they just kind of
No.
They just signed up and gave you a check for 10K?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so giving you the framework, I mean, this is really I look at this as a baseball game, and campaigns like WeFunder, and I'm sure all of them do some type of bonus stuff, but WeFunder, WeFunder, what I really like about WeFunder is they have a special purpose vehicle. So everyone says, oh my God, aren't they going to jam up your cap table? Well, no, because you have one line item on your cap table, the SPV, and your lead investor is he's the proxy for all the votes of everybody. Subordinates themselves to the lead investor, gives their voting rights to the lead investor, which just allows the entrepreneur at the early stage to not get caught up in the governance. And all of my other businesses, I've had board of directors, but all of my other businesses were generating millions of dollars of revenue and profit, and you were able to afford board of directors. And early stage companies, you can't have all of that overhead, and so it's important to be able to have the circuit breakers and all the checks and all the disciplines and the governance, for protections. But you also need to execute on your plan, because ultimately that's what's going to make you win. And so I look at the campaign as a baseball game, and the early innings are really exciting. Like first and second inning are super exciting. There's promotion on WeFunder. People are following you. I think you get 2 or 3 webinars that they're going to promote to their audience. But then it's between like the end of the second inning and the top of the 7th inning that that's the middle inning slog, and there's no seventh inning stretch, and that's where you really have to get creative, and that's where we've got creative, and it's really around our building of our where we see some of this going longer term, because we have we have a lot of patent portfolios. What's very, very important to me is to return capital to our investors. That is paramount to me. And we're going to do it in 2 ways. One is through investment in the company. And then second is during that second inning to 7th inning, we created a fractional royalty right of our a patent portfolio for this asset, which is what we've just started the phase 2 trial on for overindulgence of food and drink. And we looked at this. This asset has been valued at $1 billion for licensing revenue, and we said we can carve off 15% of that, and make that available as a kicker for our investors. And we did it in 3 tranches. So the first tranche got the best incentive, second best, and last incentive, and it gave us the ability to close that. Tranche 1 is coming to a close. Tranche 2 is coming to a close. Tranche 3 is coming to a close. And I'm just using this as an example of what we can do. I'm sure every one of your companies has something you could do within that framework. And so that allowed you to get the early innings buzz, did 3 things, and then always at the end of the campaign, that's where you bring in, you know, a significant amount of money. I think we probably brought in $300,000 or $400,000 in the last month or two, and it's because there's a fear of missing out, and that's really important to think about a campaign in that manner. And to your point of you know, the time, this is not set it and forget it. You know, it does take effort, and you know, what you put in, what you get out. Like I say to people, you know, how you do anything is how you do everything, and the way that we run our campaign is the way that we run our company. And with velocity and transparency, we want to get that flywheel going. The mass of that flywheel is increased when we've got more clinical trials, more papers, more evidence-based science, more formulation, CMC work, and the bigger that mass, the more inertia that we have that keeps things going.
Got it. Well, I think we have a lot of questions. Sky, why don't you take over and run some Q&A for a few minutes? I have a couple other questions, but let's let the audience have their turn. Go for it, Sky.
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Thanks so much, Jim and Tien. So we're going to get started with the questions. While we do that, I'm just going to launch a quick poll. Feel free to respond to that. It is multiple choice. And if you don't want to answer, you can just click that red little X in the top left corner and get rid of it. But we'll leave that up for a few minutes while we get started with Q&A. So the first question, I guess we actually did have quite a few questions about this. And I know you touched on it a little bit, Jim, talking about the SPV, but one of the main questions is what made you land on doing WeFunder versus another one like Start Engine or another crowdfunding platform?
Yeah, so I've, you know, I don't want to. So I have experience with Red Crow, which was the first crowdfunding campaign that we worked with, which was founded by Jerry Harrison and Bill Smith. Jerry Harrison was former keyboardist for Talking Heads, and they were focused only in the life science space. And I really, really liked what they were doing, and they embraced our opioid withdrawal and diligence, but they were for accredited investors only. And then we moved from them to WeFunder with our second campaign, and then we did Start Engine, and we had some challenges with that campaign, with just getting it started, a little bit of overpromising and under-delivering, and then we moved from there to Dealmaker, and Dealmaker, that was the individual platform that they were going to run and talk, because I was interested in the analytics, and there was overselling and under-delivering, and that drove me back to WeFunder. You know, when you've danced with the rest, you go back to the best.
Got it. Next question is, did you take all investors directly on your cap table, or did WeFunder offer a transfer agent service to hold that raise as a single line item?
Yeah, so with WeFunder, we don't have any, we just have on our cap table, we just have the SPV. So it's a special purpose vehicle, and they're holding all of their, it's within the special purpose vehicle. So the way that it works is, we're doing a convertible note, and the convertible note is between Sen-Jam and the SPV. And then the investors are coming in as a private placement on the other side of it. And so that's how that works. We keep track, because every close that we have to keep track of the closing, because our convertible note has a interest on it, accrued interest. So we accrue the interest. That's expensed on our income statement, and so we keep track of that. But on our balance sheet, it's one line item for the SPV.
Okay. Someone like your opinion on running a crowdfunding campaign on more than one platform, such as doing like WeFunder and Start Engine at the same time. What would your opinion on that be?
I think it could be a little complicated and confusing to the audience. They would, I think it does take time and effort, and the responsiveness of both campaigns are different. The setup is different. So I would stick with one.
Got it. Okay. And kind of a multiple part question, but what was the average size investment for your campaign, and how many investors did you take?
With what? Which investment?
Oh, just talking about your WeFunder, what was the average investment size and how many
Oh,
investors did
okay.
you take?
Yeah. So overall, we have 1,100 investors, and the average investor has invested a little over $5,000, and the average investment has been $3,500. And then just to show you the distribution, the median on a distribution curve is $500. So the vast majority of investments are $500, but the average investment's about 3,500 and the per investment, and the average investor has invested over 5,500.
Okay, great. And then how are you managing your investor base right now?
We use an investor relations database that called Angel Span, and it allows us to curate monthly updates, which is really important from a velocity and transparency perspective. And the database tracks the progress that we're making through some diagnostics, and then it also allows us to put out updates, as frequently as we want. And they have an individual who oversees our account, and it's curated. They curate and edit and we've worked with them since we started crowdfunding.
Okay. How do you suggest testing the water before the launch?
Yeah, the testing the water thing, and I think all the campaigns do this. It's a great that. Thank you for that question, because I didn't end my sentence when I mentioned it before. But yeah, a lot of people are concerned about how their campaign might be perceived, or there might be a nervousness about, like, oh, do I have to talk to friends and family, and are people going to make commitments? And the testing of the waters allows you to set a threshold and attract people to your campaign. But unless that threshold is met, the campaign's not going to go forward. And part of the idea is to give you that ability to promote your campaign in the background, and using my flywheel analogy is to get some inertia going, and then when you break through where you think 25, 50, 75, you could set that bar anywhere, and then you can go live. And then once you go live, the you start collecting, then people see that you came out, and there's momentum behind it.
Okay. Um, what do you think the key reasons are that you've had so many investors invest in multiple rounds?
Um, Investors have complimented us on the work that we're doing, the space that we're in, and the velocity and transparency, the truth and trust around building a company with I'm going to telling people what we're going to do and then doing it, setting quarterly, monthly, quarterly, annual goals, being incredibly transparent with what we're doing. And we want to demystify the life science. We're bringing lean manufacturing, lean distribution methodologies to early stage drug development, and it's not complicated. Like everyone can understand this, and we're all aging, and we're focused on age-related diseases, and we're focused on longevity, and we're focused on inflammation's impact on all of that, and that's impacting everybody. And as we've mastered blood pressure and cholesterol, and this is an area that everyone's interested in. So I think a lot of people are following us and are interested in the work that we're doing because of the impact we can make in those two spaces.
Okay, awesome. I know you've talked a lot about how you've done multiple crowdfunding campaigns. What lessons do you feel like you learned from each campaign? Like, what would you do differently based on how much you raised, or what what were your takeaways from each campaign?
That's a great question, and I look at entrepreneurship like wartime innovation. Is that like when we're going to battle, and we're gonna do what we're gonna do, and then we have to assess what transpired. We're gonna take the good, and we're gonna double down on the good, and we're gonna get rid of what's not working. And you can't get stuck over what's not working, and you just got to keep moving forward. And I described some of the lessons learned before. Big lesson learned of being clear on where your audience, your investment audience, is going to come from. Also, being aware of the service levels you're going to get from the crowdfunding company. Somebody might offer white glove treatment, and you'll be very disappointed because you don't get it. And you want to everything you do, you want to be able to maintain a positive attitude, and this is all about co-creation. And we're co-creating with our investors, we're co-creating with the crowdfunding platform, and we're co-creating with the work that we're doing. And it's all a co-creation of what we're creating. And if negative energy falls into that because somebody overpromises and underdelivers, you just gotta move on.
Okay. Is it true that if someone invests more than 25K, there's no fees?
That used to be the old school of with WeFunder, which are in our first campaign. If you invested over 25,000, there was no fee, but that has changed, and I don't think any other platform. I know that some platforms take a little bit of equity as well as they take equity and a commission, but be careful there as well, because some of those campaigns want you to use their cap table, and then like that's a fee that you might be paying unless you want to go to Carta or Estrella or somebody else. But that that's something that I found that wasn't brought out up front, and then people want you to be on their cap table, and so be careful there.
Okay. Did you have a marketing team handle all the outreach and promotion? Sometimes for a small company, this can be a lot of effort for a single CEO or a team member to take on.
Yeah, so we have a full-time communications person, um, a full-time communications person that has worked with us, that has been involved directly with me. We would do a huddle every Sunday. We do a huddle every Sunday morning, Christine and I, at 10 a.m. And we put our campaign together for what we're planning on creating for that week, based on how the previous week closed out, new activity, and we could do a lot in that 1 hour of what we're going to do, and then Christine leads it, and I can support her if she has issues, or if I did something, she can step in and handle anything that I might do. Like if we're doing a webinar, Christine will facilitate that webinar, and whether it's me or Jackie and I or our whole team speaking on that webinar, we share the responsibility, but we really try to co-create the week. We're like the Stephen Colbert show, like every night we create the week's content on Sunday.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the type of A/B testing you use for social media?
Yeah, so one of the things that in order to turn prospects into leads, and leads into quotes, and quotes to orders, um, when we get a database of names, a lot of times, and this could be industry specific, and a lot of people talk to me within the funding space, that within every industry there are some databases of contacts that you can get. So and you could search around, and you can get them at a good price, but you get a CSV file and you download them, and then you just do a bunch of A/B testing and see what the open and response rate is with those. And then you keep paring that down, because if you don't want to, as I said, it could take 5 to 7 touches before somebody makes an investment. But you've got to be able to try to do that. That's at the top of the funnel. That's the most expensive touching. And you got to use as much automation for that as possible. And then try to do that A/B testing of what do they like, this or like that? Do they are you interested in this, or are you interested in that? And then it's just a whittling down, and then after we get it whittled down enough, then we'll put it into our Angel Span investor relations database.
Okay. Can the lead investor be simply replaced by someone that places a larger bet?
It typically is somebody who's gonna, put a larger investment into the company, and that's been our experience. Only WeFunder, I believe WeFunder is the only one who has that model of a lead investor.
Okay. Did you have to deal with the blue sky laws in the States at all?
That's a great question, and that's where when I said that we do Reg D and Reg CF in parallel, when I first started, we were taking, after we lost the benefit of the 25,000, the no commission on checks above 25,000, we started taking in checks. I think we maybe had it at 50,000 that we would do, with an accredited investor, because most likely a $50,000 investors accredited. We were taking them in on the Reg D side. And we may have brought in some 25s as well. But then that's when we had to go to the blue sky laws. We had to find an exemption in every state. And so we had to do the anti-money laundering, the know your customer and accredited investor verification. We had to do that for the Reg D investors. And then we had to do blue skies to get an exemption for that investor. And now I realize that I won't, investments under $100,000, I'll run through crowdfunding because it's less expensive. With what I have to pay our lawyers to do that, like I was shocked with legal fees for doing those items. And WeFunder does the AML, KYC, accredited investor verification. And because it's Reg CF, they don't have to do any blue sky. It's all under Rule CF.
Okay, thank you. How did you value your portfolio?
Yeah, so we when we started, we kind of back a napkin, and then we did a convert as we advanced. Our valuation increased, and then we 3 years ago we went from an LLC to a C corp, and a big thing that we did there, which is really important for anybody considering that, is there's a program which I didn't know about, which is called QSB 1202. QSB is qualified business qualified stock business stock, and it's what it does is allows you, if you value your company if your company comes in valued under $50 million and you hold your stock for 5 years, you can get 5 times the valuation, 10 times the valuation back as a federal exemption. So we got that done 3 years ago, and our valuation was at 42 million then. And then from there, we, based on advancements, we went to 70 million. And then last year, we went from 70 to 80 to 100. And now we just started our Reg D campaign at 125 million. So it's, the market dictates a little. It's, but offset with that, we had these 2 assets valued, which we're seeking licensing partners on right now. And their risk adjusted net present value at 300 million right now. So the 125 million valuation that we have is low compared to what a third party independent valuation is. And then completing the second phase 2 clinical trial that we'll do this year, our value is going to be at 550 million. And that puts no value on any of our other assets. That puts 0 on everything else. And so we still feel that we're conservative in our valuation, and we want to stay that way. But that's, we're always there. The unfortunate part with crowdfunding that I always say is that, different than the stock market, where you have a bid and you have an ask and you have a market maker and you have liquidity. We don't have liquidity. We are the market maker. We have an ask, but there's no bid. So we have to artificially create those things and use that mindset in everything that we do. So I'm comfortable with where we are with our valuation now, and a 25% increase over where our last valuation was. and backstopping it against an independent third party, which is 3 times that, and will be 3 times that now, and it'll be 4 times that at the end of the year.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Um, can the crowdfunding platform be a prelude to a larger syndication offering? For example, to raise the first 10 million for a 50 million target for a real estate development.
Yeah, so recently I've talked to somebody about that. They wanted to run into it to, the next step after Reg CF. Reg CF, there's 2 levels you could be at. You could raise up to like $1.2 million with just reviewed financials, or 5 million with audited financials. And this company I recently spoke to, they were interested in raising $12 million, but it was going to be over a couple of years. And they were thinking of doing a Reg A or Reg A plus, which it's a Reg A plus. You can raise from accredited and non-accredited investors up to 75 million. It costs a fair amount of money to set that up, and it's only good for a year. And so I told this individual, you may want to consider like raising your first 5 million, and then the next year raise another 5 million, and you don't have to, like, you're at 12 million. Maybe there's a way that you could do that over multiple years, if you're allocating the capital in that way, so you don't. And a $10 million real estate play might fall into that, but the next play after the Reg CF is either Reg D, or partitioning things between Reg D and Reg CF. Reg D 506C is accredited investors only, and so anybody who could come into your campaign, and if you offloaded them onto your Reg D, that doesn't get added to your Reg CF. So there's ways of working around it.
Okay, awesome. And we have so many awesome questions. We do have about 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask a few more of them. We can kind of maybe do some rapid fire ones before we run out of time. So, what do you think the realistic timetable is to get the first money invested? Because of course you're going to set it up, and then once you turn it on, would you say it's more like 3 weeks or 3 months, or what do you believe to be realistic?
I think it's more 3 weeks than 3 months. And the timing is after the filing of the Reg CF, because this is with the SEC. This is not some back office. This is the Securities Exchange Commission that they have to file. You've got to fill out, and WeFunder does a great job working with you on filling this out. And then every year you have to update it, and you have to 100% certify that the information is correct. And so that process, and it's all the pre-spade work that's done, and in testing the waters. You could, as soon as your campaign is up, while you're filing your Reg CF, you could be doing your testing the waters, and capital could be coming in, or commitments could be made. And then when you get your Reg CF, you could decide to flick the switch anytime you want.
Okay. What are the conversion triggers on your convertible note, and are you using a safe?
Yeah, so we're using a convertible note with 20% discount, 8% interest. The conversion trigger is outside equity $1 million investment, and we've been discussing the conversion. When is the right time to convert? It'll be a project, and I still feel for the security of having myself been involved in many investments, the security of a convertible note versus a stock. The convertible note holders effectively own the company now. Like, if there was any default, they would own everything in the company. And we have a single class of stock, and converting everybody to stock, we would all be equal. And not that I'm I'm always looking out for our investors. Not that I think we're in a great place and position, but we are looking to convert soon, and a safe, for those who don't know, which is a simple agreement for equity. A safe is kind of like a convertible note with no terms on it. So it doesn't have a discount, it doesn't have interest. You could set anything you want, but it's really, it's really pegging it to some equity amount in the future.
Okay. What percentage of your work week do you spend on fundraising, and how many people do you have helping you?
I probably spend, when we're deep into the throes with everything that we're doing, I probably spend 1.5 to 2 days a week, and Christine probably spends, 2 days, 2 to 2.5 days a week. So probably 5 days, probably a man person per week.
Okay. Um, so I just filtering through some of these.
And there's lots of
What? Yeah.
elements, as you're saying that, there's lots of elements to it, because like I consider like rebalancing our database, creating the next campaign, setting up for webinars, like there's, and it ebbs and flows. It's not, it's not all at once.
Okay. What is your annual spend to keep the campaign going, such as platforms, communications director, etc.?
Yeah, well, ours it's very, it's well, it's, if we've spent more and more every year on third parties, for, to bring in investors, and but if we look at, um, our internal marketing and what we've spent, um, in 2024, it might be, um, maybe $200,000 to bring in like 3.4 million.
Okay. Thank you. And so, Jim, this is truly a terrific masterclass and fireside chat that we've had today. If you just want to leave the crowd with your take one or two takeaways that were the biggest thing for you for the crowdfunding campaign, and we can end it there.
Yeah, I'll give two things. One is, and I was taking some notes because there was some biting around the edges, but there's another company, King's Crowd. King's Crowd is a rating agency for crowdfunding, and it's a great platform. And I usually offer, and I know I'm on videotape, so Chris Listerno, if he's watching this, I'm going to get in trouble. But when I have one-on-one conversations with people, I usually offer my credentials for them to go on King's Crowd, to use it. It's a great, they collect all the data on all the crowdfunding stuff. So when you're considering what type of security to use, or what type of valuation, or where companies are, it's a great platform for that. And I don't know what it costs. I buy an annual subscription, and I don't know if there's a free version. I'm sure there's some free, but kingscrowd.com is a great rating service for this space. The other thing I'd want to leave, everyone with is step into it. If you like, there's, you can go a long distance before you have to make a commitment. And if you lean into it, if you're not knowing what you're looking to raise, the biggest thing that really upsets me is I have so many friends who've developed so much intellectual property, but they've never been able to raise the capital to develop the invention that's protected by the intellectual property, and they're so proud of their IP. And that's something that I'm looking to change. And the innovation that we're doing is leading the change. And so I just, whether it's WeFunder, whether it's Start Engine, whether it's Dalmore Group, I mean, like I love the Dalmore Group and WeFunder. They're two that I followed. Dalmore Group has been for more Reg A plus, but they have some really interesting things on the Reg CF and Reg D space as well. So give it it's oftentimes it's viewed as being very, very intimidating, and you could take some baby steps, and it's like setting up a LinkedIn account.
Oh, that's awesome. Jim, you are so great. And we want to all thank you for being so open and honest during this conversation today. And I know just based on the chat, a lot of people found it super useful. And yes, for all those questions of if it will be recorded and posted, it has been recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel, which I put the link to our YouTube channel in the chat. So everyone should have that. So Jim, once again, thank you. Us as CONNECTpreneur, we do have some upcoming events and master classes, which Avery put those links in the chat. We would love to have you join. But we're so glad that everyone could make it today, and we hope to see you at some future master classes and CONNECTpreneur events. And so with that, we can end it here. And Jim, thank you so much for everything you've done today.
Thank you all for attending, and let's work together and change this world we're in.
Awesome. Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.